as you Muslim. Sorry, I'm trying to look at your name. I see you. Okay, sorry. Didn't get your name. My question is, what are your beliefs on the radicals in the media? I recognize they're not exactly the best followers of your religion, but what does the Quran and your personal beliefs say about the term the radicals are using called jihad? I don't know much about that, and as my duties as a soldier, I'm just curious as to what the text actually says about that and your personal beliefs.
Thank you for that question. I knew it was going to come up.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
It's okay, it's okay. I'm glad you said it because it's in almost everybody's mind. So it's, well, first of all, there is a tradition of the Prophet where they're coming from a war, and he says that we have just come from it's called Jihad al-Asghar, a small jihad, and now we have Jihad al-Akbar, the great jihad. And people around him asked, what could be greater than this? And he said it's the jihad, struggle within. So in Arabic, jihad is both, means struggle in every aspect. It's not just specific to the search in the soul and controlling one's own self and one's own desires, but it's in every aspect of one's life, including fighting. But it does not mean that we can just go and fight and that there is unrestricted. If you look at, I think the reality is that Muslims are actually incredibly peaceful. I know, you hear everything otherwise, but if you look, for example, American Muslims in this country, we are among have the least violence probably of almost any other group in this country. We're incredibly peaceful, believe me. I know it says everything. If you look at the other countries, like most of the other countries in the world, we are also incredibly peaceful. The problems come not because of the religion. Let's be honest. There was a great article by Graham Fuller. If you can look it up, I recommend it. Graham Fuller, I believe it was in Foreign Policy. And he had this wonderful article. It was a bad article. It was a bad title. The title was "A World Without Islam." But he looked at what would happen if there was no Islam today. What would the world look like? And he said, more likely than not, many of the same things that we see today would happen. And for example, in terms of the struggles in Iraq, in occupation, I mean, respectfully, I know you're a soldier, but if we were attacked, what was our human reaction? Forget the fact that they're there and we're here. What is our human reaction? And it was, now we could look in after 2020 vision and say, okay, we were the aggressors and we made a mistake. We made a mistake. And we admit it now, and the Iraqi people know we made a mistake. The question is, how do we get out? With regards to Palestine, for example, forget the fact that they're Muslims or Christians. There's also Palestinian Christians. What would be the reaction of any group that's occupied and any group that is, what's the reaction? Forget, again, the religion. What do they do? How do you get it? It's 60 years occupation. Respectfully, how do we get out of it? I think both sides are very peaceful people. Both sides want a resolution. The question is how. With regards to the Chechens who are occupied by the Soviets, or in Egypt you have a autocratic leader, and every money that we send right now to Israel and to Egypt. Egypt is the second largest, and originally my family is from North Africa, from Egypt. The second largest aid package goes to Egypt. And where does it go? Does it go to to build the civil society? No, it goes into the coffers, indirectly, into the military regime, which strengthens the military and suppresses the people and the civil society. So they're angry, not because of what we did yesterday or 20 years ago in Iran or whatever, but because today our money is going to strengthen the military regime, the autocracy, to a point that right now Mubarak, who is the president, is over 70 years old. They're saying he can't make it for another 2 years. 2011 is the next election, and they're asking who's going to be the next leader. So who does Mubarak want? He wants his son. The military says, look, we're not gonna let you have your son there unless he gives us he vows complete allegiance to us. Okay? So here's the military saying, we're not going to support it, meaning we're the ones who actually will put you in or not, unless you give us this. In Pakistan right now, for over 2-3 years, we had the lawyers' movement. The lawyers, the civil society was rebelling against this autocratic leader, and who were we generally supporting? It was the autocratic leader who we were giving, as we know, a great deal of money. So there are problems in the world. Just take the word Islam out of the equation and look at the human perspective, and you'll see something else. With regards to the Quran, what it says about violence. It says, first of all, we're not supposed to just fight aggressively for any reason. Believe me, I know that we hear everything else, but for the most part, Muslims are incredibly peaceful, Islam, and it has minorities in every country. In Egypt, it's almost 20% Coptic Christians. In Lebanon, it's almost 50%. In India, I can go one after the other. So if it was really about exterminate all the infidels, right? How is it that much of the Muslim world has minorities or majorities in their countries? And the Quran tells us, it says, look, when you're in war, you fight. You fight, yes. But then there's qualifiers. They're saying, but it is better for peace. But it is better to try to gain peace. But it is better, and there's one qualifier after the other after the other. God loves it if you try to seek peace and justice. But like the old motto, there cannot be no peace without justice. Just remember this. It is not that they are aggressive or inhumane, etc. It is that they're human beings. And I would ask you to do one last thing. There is, if you look at the history, I study and I teach U.S. history and among other things, and if you look at the history of this country as well as the history of almost every country, every time you have a minority that you want to suppress or you want to minimize their voice, what do? First thing you do is you dehumanize them. The Jewish people, every people that were massacred or marginalized, every single one, the first step of this is dehumanizing them. Is take away their humanity. Why? Confucius has this beautiful saying of mutual moral obligation. That means as human beings, we have a mutual moral obligation to each other. It just comes natural. When we're walking down the street, we want to help the old woman who just fell, or it's our human tendency. But if you take away that humanity of a person and you make them out to be these demons, what is the response? What did we do to the Native Americans after we start calling them savages? What do we do to the Jewish people when we start, it's just this, so we have to, one, look at the humanity of the people. Graham Fuller in that piece, he said, I believe an important truth, that we have to take that Islam out of the equation and look at what would we do if, just as human beings, what would those groups have done either way. So I hope that answered your questions. My apologies.